Hello friends, this is Otz, at least when he isn't actually as good at Dead by Daylight. And today's video, I wanted to talk specifically about Otzdarva's video. He posted it a couple days ago, I think, as of this recording, where he basically did a small experiment, essentially intentionally not tunneling for a good sample of games and kind of just getting the overall results, just kind of an interesting little experiment and some conclusions he drew from it. And I thought it was extremely interesting to go watch. It's like a 6-minute video. I'll leave the link in the description below. Please check it out. I assume you've probably watched it, because if you're somehow on my channel and you haven't seen Otzdarva's yet, go there. He's an infinitely more entertaining content creator. That being that aside, he basically said for 1 week he wasn't going to tunnel, and the rules he put on himself were never hook a survivor twice in a row. I think that's pretty fair. And most notably, he still tried to win, not letting people just get away from chase, not, giving up hatch or anything, playing several different killers and no full meta builds of slow down from generators and things like that. So overall, I think they're all very fair rules to get a accurate sample set of data when it comes to having a small experiment. And don't mind me, I'm just panning over through the video to the results. His conclusions from that video, a little bit of a spoiler alert. If you guys want to watch it, I give you time, please click now. It's a 6-minute video. If you've already seen it or whatever, then I'm gonna go through it. His conclusions for the video are that he won roughly 80% of his matches, which I think is a awesome variable or statistic to kind of demonstrate tunneling is not a necessity. A lot of people do feel it is, but he won a good chunk of his games without at least directly tunneling the way that he describes it. He also concluded that he still quote unquote tunneled. A lot of people still felt that his playstyle was tunneling, despite him not breaking his own rules. And that's the point I wanted to go into the most. The other two conclusions he had were some people want you to tunnel, some people egg you on to, wave you down hey, come chase me. And it's are you supposed to deliberately ignore those people? I had a game when I was playing the Skull Merchant, and someone kept on running into me and doing the come on emote. And it wasn't because they wanted to get tunneled, they just wanted to get out of that game. And I deliberately ignored them a couple times. No, it's okay. I know I might have gone against you really quick at first and I got another hit on you. I don't want to, tunnel him out of the game. And then we talked in chat and he was just Skull Merchant's boring as shit, yada yada. We don't need to get into that. But yeah, he's so some people like being chased, some people want it to happen, and so it's sometimes you can't even avoid it that way. And then he says the last point was sometimes you can't even tunnel, that depending on the skill set of your opponents, and he noticed particularly at the higher quality level of survivors he went against, that the perks that they bring and the coordinated playstyle that they have makes tunneling feel like it's actually just outright impossible to do. And that's very fair. If you copy and paste just some extremely strong perks across all 4 survivors, it's tunneling almost becomes impossible. It seems for off the records, you never can go for the same person twice in a row. But I wanted to get into that second detail where, despite him implementing a rule of never getting the same person on hook twice in a row, without having to hook somebody else, his chat, in addition to people in the endgame chat, his Twitch chat, were both still saying that he kind of was tunneling. And I thought it was interesting because, admittedly, I feel like this is kind of similar to the discussion that we had, at least on the channel a little bit before, of how do we define toxicity, and that kind of streamlines what we would consider to be toxic and not toxic. And I think in some regards, tunneling in this context is kind of in a similar situation where, Otzdarva's definition from the killer perspective is I'm never hooking the same person twice in a row and I'm still trying to win. And I think that's a very reasonable definition to say he's not tunneling. Now, when you take it from the survivor perspective, and this is something I thought about a little bit, because even when I'm not, being critical, being damn, we're getting tunneled out of a game, but it happens. And the thing is, in those games, the killer is also not hooking me back to back. But for example, as a survivor, I get put on hook. I'm now sitting there for 30 seconds waiting for a teammate to come get me. In those 30 seconds, the killer runs off somewhere. Maybe a generator got complete. They have the information. They run, get that down. I get unhooked, and now they come back for me 20 seconds later. Let's just say, right? Like I'm waiting on hook. I get unhooked, and then we don't even have time to heal. The killer just runs straight back towards me. From my perspective, I feel like I got tunneled there. Like I sat on hook for half the time the killer walked away, and once I got unhooked, I haven't had time to play the game in a traditional sense. I didn't get time to reset, work on a generator, set up a totem, do a glitch, whatever challenge, whatever survivors do that's playing the game that isn't interacting immediately with the killer. That time was significantly cut down, where I'm on hook, I get unhooked, I don't have time to do anything else in the game. Someone's already back on me. And in my mind, that feels like tunneling. But like I'm gonna say 90% of the time I make a comment that someone's getting tunneled, I've looked back and realized the killer walks away and does something else before coming back. And it's like, I know in their mind they're not tunneling. Objectively, I don't think they are. They're applying pressure across multiple survivors. But from my personal perspective, I still really didn't get to play the game. But the killer is playing, pretty efficiently, making sure there's not a lot of downtime, because any downtime in a game really does result in generators flying by you and, lots of stuff getting set up. So you really do want to capitalize on any bits of information you can get. And when you get that big noise notification from an unhook, it gives you a direction, a point of information, and a way to go. And once again, I hope this isn't, a hot take or anything, but I would think a lot of people recognize that there is a very, very big strength in making sure that you get the game down to a 3v1 as quick as possible. If you bring the game down to a 3v1, the game's balance is, in my opinion, like very out of alignment, and does usually pretty decently favor the killer with enough generators and stuff left. Like, the tunneling or removing someone out of the game as quickly as possible is an effective strategy for killer. And Otzdarva, he kind of talks about that last bullet point of like, you can't even tunnel, to a pretty reasonable thing, where he's just like, if people are bad at the game, right? And he phrases it better, but he's like, if the survivors are not very good at the game, and they, continuously run into you and stuff, tunneling's unavoidable. It happens. People are just, constantly running in. If they're a little bit better than that, tunneling feels optional. You can definitely win the game, but if you want to, secure it, then you can tunnel. If the people are better than that, tunneling feels necessary. And I've felt that sentiment before, where it's like, if I really did play without trying to get someone out of the game relatively early, I genuinely just straight up felt like I lost that game. It's every survivor's playing good enough that I need to get someone out of the game, turn it into a 3v1, and now the game feels more winnable. And then his last point was like, if you're even more coordinated and better than that as survivors, you can't tunnel them. I haven't personally gone into that. Maybe I have, and I've just interpreted it as I'm dropping chase because I recognize this person's too good. And once all 4 people copy and paste, they're really good. I just can't. I think that's the point where I'd cleanly admit I got outplayed from a game, and I'm happy to go next. But I thought it was interesting that, he set rules that he wasn't gonna tunnel, and I like his definitions. I agree with it. And yet survivors and players in his Twitch chat said he's still tunneling. And that really caught my eye as just kind of I feel like tunneling is another term that people are not using unanimously. I don't know if that's the best word to describe. Like, we have different definitions of tunneling, and that's ultimately costing us some conversation points, because I feel like the way that a killer chooses to not tunnel is to go do other things, and for a survivor to not be tunneled is to have the opportunity to play a game, So that's really it. The last thing he said was he had some suggestions to discourage tunneling, and It's right at the end of the video, and I'll just give my quick opinions on it. But if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments below. I'll probably try to explore some of that more in depth and see if I can come up with some tangible solutions. He's already mentioned a couple, but I think that all of his points were pretty interesting. So he had like 5 quick suggestions to discourage tunneling. Number 1 is heavily discourage 3 back-to-back hooks on the first survivor. So, you know, for example, if you are hooked and immediately hooked again, give them a massive buff to make sure they can stay in the game. I'm not sure how that would be done, but I think that's honestly a good suggestion. If you're getting hooked twice in a row back-to-back like that, you probably shouldn't be getting immediately slapped out of the game. So I think that's honestly a good take. I always had this idea where, like, if you know you're getting hooked twice and you're picked up on death hook ready to go before anyone else got hooked, it's like the entity's giant arm comes down, smacks the killer, and is like, it's not his time yet, and the survivor gets to run like a free DS. I don't know, probably way out of pocket, but if the entity's here to play it like, you know, we're playing with people's lives like a game, why not? I think that'd be some thematically interesting idea. More perk and base kit incentives for spreading hooks, you know, so buff things like Grim Embrace. I like that. I think that if those perks have a sufficient tangible enough reward, they will become meta, and the meta will then encourage a more positive playstyle, and I absolutely think that is beneficial for the game. Granted, tunneling, asymmetrical games, it's always going to be a strategy, but I think that buffing those kind of perks would be better. He says, lessen the effect of perks that punish spreading hooks like Deliverance and Adrenaline. I agree. I'd have to think more on particular for why, like, you know, Deliverance is a perk that benefits from someone spreading hooks, but it's like, you know, you don't get your Deliverance value if you're hooked first. You don't get your Deliverance value if you're hooked back to back really quickly. So I guess that's kind of the argument and logic for it. And absolutely, I think that those perks feel very strong, and I don't know if Deliverance is meta per se, but I know in comp tournaments, I've seen Deliverance, I've seen Adrenaline, so it probably has merit. Spread anti-tunneling effects across more perks, that's bullet point number 4. So not just Decisive Strike and Off the Record, which many people don't have access to. I'd really think it'd be beneficial if there was some base game killer, or I'm not, sorry, I guess it'd be more Survivor. A base game Survivor which had some type of effect akin to Decisive Strike or Off the Record. So if you don't want to be tunneled, you don't have to pay the money for the Halloween chapter, and you don't need Off the Record from Zarina to, you know, not get tunneled. The last thing that he says is adjust the safety of some maps. I think regardless of tunneling, this is like a necessary change for the game. So he's like, you can't expect to win without tunneling if a map has 17 safe pallets. And that's fair. I've tried my best to split pressure on the game, and usually what I end up having to do is find not just the, you know, weakest survivor, but it's find the survivor that's willing to drop pallets the fastest and stay on them for 2 minutes, so half the map of like worth of pallets gets used up. I think all of his changes or his recommended suggestions to discourage tunneling are amazing. I would be happy to go in depth to more of those. If you guys are interested, in the comments below, let me know. But what do you think about the experiment? What did you think about the definition of tunneling in particular? I think a lot of those points, if we were to kind of collectively agree that this is a more apt definition or application of the word tunneling, then we can kind of reach a better consensus on how to stop it from happening in the game. Because I don't know, in my opinion, it's like, it's a necessary thing that people are gonna feel they need to keep doing. Unfortunately, it's the nature of asymmetrical horror games, or not even just horror, asymmetrical games. You know, removing a player completely shifts the balance of it in favor of the power role, in this case, the killer. And I don't know, I wanted to know what you guys thought, because when I heard that, I was like, it seems amazing that he was able to do this with good success. So I think that's, you know, clear evidence. If you're a sufficiently skilled player, tunneling is never required to win a lot of games, but some people feel you need to do it anyways. And even he said it's like, you feel like it's a necessity, and I get that. I just wonder if there's a way to move forward with it. I'm not going to ramble anymore with the video. Clearly, we're queuing into the next game on my footage, so don't worry about it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful weekend if you watch this on Friday or whatever day you end up seeing this, and take care, everybody. I'll figure out what I'm doing for the next video on Monday. Peace.